Bring the lights down low, it's time to show. Lights, camera, you know what we mean. Behold the magic of the silver screen. Some movies rock, some movies shock. They're powerful, alright. We cover them all on your favorite part. So many movies we can choose. Even when you win, you lose. Life moves pretty fast. Some will fizzle and some movies last. I understood there would be no math. It's the 30-something movie podcast. Be excellent to each other. Peace out and word to your mother. They're from the best decades. Movie magic that never fades. Lightsabers clash, phasers set to stun. Action packed from dusk till dawn. We have deep thoughts and questions free. Come share our love of the movies we see. Life moves pretty fast. Some will fizzle and some movies last. I understood there would be no math. It's the 30-something movie podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to November. We have made our way successfully, unscathed. I mean, well, some of us might be a little scathed as we made our way through Horror Month, but we made our way successfully through it. I'm a little sad that can't keep doing the October theme music, but that's okay. Unless, do we want to consider this movie a horror movie? Is there a way we can do that?
A couple of guys drown. I mean, maybe.
Yeah. There's references to University of Alabama. Can I consider that a horror movie? I would just like to say that a lot of times, I know we have people listening from all over the country and especially places all over the country that don't like my favorite team. And I feel like I do a halfway decent job of not throwing out a bunch of references to that, not antagonizing people, but I'm sorry. I'm probably going to make some references today to this particular movie and to some of the references they're made in this movie, and because I don't know. Some of that makes me as angry as Pearl Harbor makes Pat.
Wow, that's saying something.
Jeez.
So, you can roll that on the other direction is what you can do with that.
Oh boy.
So,
We're getting all fired up tonight,
we're getting
aren't we?
fired up already. Yeah. Well, I've already name dropped Pat. So, Pat, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, John. How are you doing?
I'm angry, Pat. That's what I'm doing. I'm angry.
I can see that. I can see that. There were a lot of angry people in this movie that we're going to watch.
I'm mad as Hackman, and I'm not going to take it anymore.
That's good.
So, and you back there somewhere, maybe down in the engine room. There's Bo. Bo, how are you doing?
I am well, John. How are you?
Are we floating the buoy, Bo?
Float the buoy.
There you go. Well, the one thing I do know from from this movie and from our other favorite podcasts is we got to have Weps. Weps is the key.
Weps is the key.
That's about all I know, but that's what I know.
I'm getting into deeper thoughts, but I'm still confused. Was that abbreviated for weapons officer, or was Weps like
It was the dude's name,
Was that his name? I think it was his name. Well, no, actually, that was his nickname. So it must have been weapons officer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because according to the IMDb, his name is Lieutenant Peter Ince, and his nickname in quotes is Weps.
Well, if your name was Peter Ince, I think finding a good, cool nickname would be high on your list of things.
That would be key. Yes.
Yeah.
Can we
like the weapons key?
There you go.
Here we are.
Can we just say that the chief of the boat being referred to as Cobb? Okay. But then when he refers to him as Mr. Cobb, I don't know.
If it's an old submarine thing or not, but they do the same thing in Red October.
Do they say Mr. Cobb though?
I don't know if they ever say Mr. Cobb, but I hear Cobb.
That's what I'm talking about.
Chief of the boat.
There is a chief of the boat, right? Like, I'm getting out over my skis because I've never served on a submarine, but I know there's a chief of the boat. But
when
Mr.
the
Cobb
captain snaps, And he says, with his sidearm. Oh, I'm wondering now. In my head, I thought yes, but now as I'm playing that scene in my head, I don't think so.
He doesn't say Mr.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's real.
I mean,
it's real Leah energy going on there.
I mean, that's like, okay, I'm going to write you a pass to Mr. Band Director. Like, I don't.
It's the Mr. Band Director to you?
Mr. the Band Director.
Right.
Is that not your name?
I got a lot of names.
Okay. Yeah, you got a lot of nerve is what you got.
I got believe me, I got a lot of nerve.
Mm-hmm.
After what you pulled.
Mm-hmm.
To quote one character in this movie, my humble opinion, in the nuclear world, Pat is the true enemy.
God.
There was so much good about this movie. And there was so much, well,
so I'm looking back at the quotes on IMDb, and I don't know that you should take like the capitalization of things in IMDb as anything, but yes, so there is a quote where Hunter says chief of the boat, and chief of the boat says sir, and he says thank you Cobb, and they have it as capital C, capital O, capital B.
mm-hmm.
And then another section of quotes is where you've got a back and forth between Captain Ramsey and chief of the boat, Mr. Cobb. Yes, sir. You're aware of the name of the ship, aren't you, Mr. Cobb? Very aware, sir. Bears a proud name, doesn't it, Mr. Cobb? And every single time the IMDb page says Mr. Cobb, it's C, capital O, capital B.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they're just using it as, maybe the captain is using it interchangeably as his name. So yes, maybe Gene Hackman as Captain Ramsey would refer to you as Mr. the Band Director. Now, granted, that's the series of quotes that ends with Go Bama and Roll Tide. So, I mean, take it for what it is.
Miss Coach Klein.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, before we get too far, Pat, how do you feel about the comments they made about horses in this movie?
That's complete utter bunk. Yeah, like when he says that, the only thing, okay, and I'm not an expert, but I know enough to get myself into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was okay. Yeah, he said that, and all that established for me was just how much this guy thinks he knows what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like it almost kind of fit with the character because he was so sure of himself and he was so completely wrong. He was so opinionated. And then it was, yeah, I mean.
Yeah, he makes a comment about horses, and Pat's sitting there watching the movie, and all of a sudden he turns into Doc Holliday from Tombstone. Nope, I'm certain I hate him.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's something about horses are dumb as a post, but they're intuitive.
Yeah.
And it's just dumb
as fence post, but very intuitive.
Okay.
And then he goes on to continue the thought with a quote about high school girls.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, which again, I don't even know what, like, honestly, I'm just going to go break it down. Like, what does that even mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like high school girls. Like because that's not creepy at all. Like coming from a guy, like
right.
I mean, I was just listening. And horses are some of the most intelligent animals that you'll ever meet. And yeah, like, yes, just smart. They learn. They're emotionally intelligent. They're like, yeah. So it just kind of showed his ignorance. And maybe, I guess I didn't take it as he was trying to be an expert. He just thought he was an expert in everything.
Yeah.
I didn't know what the heck he was talking about.
The movie trying to. Go ahead.
No, the movie trying to what?
I think it was the movie trying to set up the old school, new school thinking and showing you that the captain was a little out of touch. I think that was part of the whole thing, but.
Yeah, but you know, he was so sure, but he was just so full of garbage. And the whole thing about the Lippenthal stallions, they're not from Spain or from Portugal. They're from Slovenia. And the Spanish riding school is in Austria. So
there you go.
Just that whole thing was rather humorous. But I mean, it's kind of like, anyways, it was a fun bit of business, and how they went back and forth, and it was a little bit, I don't know. It's a microcosm of what I feel about this movie. And then it was sort of like, yeah, but the horses are all white, but when they're at birth, they're black. And so it's like, okay, are we making this a race thing now? Like what is going on? And yeah, anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. Should we probably introduce the movie and do trivia and all that kind of fun stuff?
He's playing the equine race card there, Pat. Yeah.
Yeah. But the horse comment, I just want to go on the record with saying was a complete line of horse crap.
Horse manure, yeah.
Horse manure, that's right.
Well, I don't even think we've said it yet. This is the 30-something movie podcast, in case you're joining in. If you haven't enjoyed what you've been listening to so far, then we are the Nerdist. Our movie this time around is Crimson Tide. I don't even think he's around anymore. We are Crimson. This time around, we were talking Crimson Tide, submarine movie. We are in the month of November. Month of November is our High Seas Adventures month, in which most of our movies have something to do with water, although I'm sure by the time we get to the net, Pat's going to point out how that has nothing to do with water whatsoever. But
no, it has
okay. There's a boat.
I'm sure it does.
Is there a boat? Yeah, there's a boat.
There's a boat.
Yeah.
Definitely a boat.
We're not going on the boat?
Forget the boat.
What about the boat? Something better than the boat? So real quickly, we spoil freely here, so be warned. If we mention a movie, you might just want to hit the skip button once or twice, and then we'll get it out of our system. Make sure you visit our website, 30podcast.com, where you can leave us a rating, a voicemail. You could become a co-executive producer via Patreon. Over there, we've got a bunch of bonus episodes that you can check out over there. At this point, I want to say we're nearing, probably with the Patreon shorts and the full-length ones, we're nearing probably 100 bonus episodes over there at this point. And then, of course, in our regular feed, we've got over 600 that you can choose from. So you can either, if you want to work back through the back catalog, feel free. If you want to go looking for a movie that you want to see if we've covered it sometime in the last 10 years, then go to our website. You can use the search feature on there and find the movie you're looking for. Because if it came out sometime between 1984 and now, or 1984 and 1995, chances are we may have covered it. So go check it out on our website over there. Since this is the first episode of the month, we typically like to go back in time just a little bit. We like to jump in the DeLorean, head back in time to what was happening this month in 1995.
When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious...
All right, so 95, November of 1995. November 1st, a revival of William Shakespeare's The Tempest, starring Patrick Stewart, opens at Broadhurst Theater in New York City and runs for 71 performances. I would love to see Patrick Stewart do some Shakespeare. Like live. I would love to go see a live performance of Patrick Stewart doing some Shakespeare. I think that would be amazing.
That would be epic.
Yes.
I mean, he is just the voice, just the presence. Like he is a credit to his
species.
I needed an excuse to use it just one more time. It's think Star Trek 5. Why do you climb the mountain? Because it's there. Why do I push the button? Because it's still there.
Push the button, Max.
Push the button. November 20th, Apple Records releases the Beatles Anthology 1 as a double CD, triple LP, the first of a 3-part series of rare recordings and outtakes by the Beatles. The set covers the years 1955 to 1964 and releases the first new Beatles song in years, Free as a Bird, a John Lennon demo that was augmented by additional lyrics and performances by the surviving 3 members of the Beatles. The album ends up topping the Billboard chart in the U.S. and peaks at number 2 in the U.K. I remember my dad being such a Beatles fan. I remember when this thing came out and he was at the store. I don't remember where he bought it, but he was at whatever store sold CDs about as quickly as he could to go get a copy of this when it came out. And I remember, I feel like they even did like I don't think it was MTV, but they did some kind of like a network TV premiere of the music video of Free as a Bird too. But living in a house with a huge Beatles fan, that was kind of a foregone conclusion. We were going to check that out.
Not to be confused with Freebird.
No, not to be confused with Freebird. Very few people, I think, go to concerts, hold up their lighters and say, play Free as a Bird. At least not the concerts I've been to. November 6th, got some sports news here. Art Modell officially announces the Cleveland Browns are moving to Baltimore, Maryland. So that is, I think, just a short time later, we will be getting the Baltimore Ravens as our NFL team after the Cleveland Browns move there. Top books
And
for...
Cleveland Browns come back like 5 years later. It's
I think
crazy.
so, yeah. Yeah. Wasn't very long. Top books were The Lost World by Michael Crichton. Top movies were Get Shorty, Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, GoldenEye, and Toy Story. And the top songs were Fantasy by Mariah Carey and Exhale Shoop Shoop by Whitney Houston. All right, that's going to do it for our time traveling. So let's jump into trivia on this one, on Crimson Tide. May 12th, 1995 is when this one came out. Rated R. Runtime 1 hour and 56 minutes, or 116 minutes if you're in the metric system. Directed by Tony Scott, who did Top Gun and Enemy of the State. Writers were Richard P. Henrik and Michael Schiffer. The screenplay was done by Michael Schiffer. Schiffer did The Peacemaker and The Four Feathers. Henrik had a few little credits here and there. Producers were Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer. Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer did a ton of big blockbuster movies, Top Gun, Pirates of the Caribbean, stuff like that. Composer was Hans Zimmer. He did The Lion King and Gladiator. Cinematographer was Darius Wolski. He did The Crow and Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest. Editor Chris Lebenzon, who, oddly enough, I don't know if you know this, he's from Spain. I don't know if you know Chris Lebenzon from Spain. Yeah.
I see what you're doing there.
Yeah. And he was the editor for Sweeney Todd and Top Gun. Production company was Hollywood Pictures, Don Simpson, Jerry Bruckheimer Films. Budget was $53 million and box office was about $157 million. Flickmetrics gives it a 74%. Cinema Score gives it an A. Denzel Washington plays Lieutenant Commander Ron Hunter. He was in Malcolm X and Training Day. Gene Hackman played Captain Frank Ramsey. He was in The French Connection and Unforgiven. Viggo Mortensen played Lieutenant Peter Weps Incy. He was in The Prophecy and Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. James Gandolfini, who passed in 2013, played Lieutenant Bobby Doherty. He was in Get Shorty and The Last Castle. George DeZunza was Chief of the Boat Walter. He was in Basic Instinct and The Deer Hunter. Matt Craven was Lieutenant Roy Zimmer. He was in A Few Good Men and Jacob's Ladder. Steve Zahn was William Barnes. He was in That Thing You Do and Out of Sight. Ricky Schroeder was Lieutenant Paul Hellerman. He was in The Champ and Silverado. Rocky Carroll was Lieutenant Derek Westergaard. He was in A Few Good Men and The Great White Hype. And Danny Nucci.
He would go on to head NCIS.
Yes. That is true. Danny Nucci was Petty Officer Danny Rivetti. He was in Titanic and The Rock. So a couple quick things about this one. Trivia-wise, Quentin Tarantino apparently did some uncredited dialogue polishing for this script, but I guess Denzel and Quentin Tarantino got into a bit of an argument because I think a lot of what you hear in the dialogue where there's any like pop culture references, there's the comic book reference to the Silver Surfer, that kind of stuff. That is apparently the Quentin Tarantino contribution to the movie. But apparently one of his other contributions was a little bit of racist dialogue that Denzel was not too happy with. So apparently they had a bit of a tiff on the, I don't know if it was on set or off set, whatever it was, but Denzel not happy with some of the dialogue that Quentin Tarantino was trying to insert into the script there.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, I don't doubt that.
Yeah.
We've seen enough of Tarantino's other movies. We know the kind of dialogue he likes to use, so.
Yeah, not that surprising.
Yeah. The movie was nominated for 3 Academy Awards: Best Film Editing, Best Sound, and Best Sound Editing. Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman improvised several of their heated confrontation scenes to kind of heighten some of the realism. I'm sure that was a lot of fun. This one I thought is kind of interesting. In 2025, so this year, Jerry Bruckheimer has shared that there is a sequel in development, possibly with Denzel Washington returning to reprise his role as Hunter.
If it turns out that Captain Hunter is now the guy who gets mutinied, I feel like that's not a sequel, that's a retread.
How can the same thing happen to the same guy twice?
Right?
Get ready. It's Crimsoner Tide.
Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, Electric Boogaloo. Yeah. What was it Danger Runs Deep was kind of the tagline for this one?
Yeah.
Danger runs even deeper than you thought. There, it's like there's a whole Inception thing kind of going, like there's enigmas wrapped up in mysteries, wrapped up in,
Spinning tops.
Yes.
Always spinning tops.
So Here's the fun part, and this is even before we kind of get into the rest of like the major moments and the other stuff. I did want to kind of address some of this, and that is when Tony Scott and the producers, Don Simpson, Jerry Bruckheimer, started developing the movie, they approached the U.S. Navy for technical support, as they had done with Top Gun about, 9 years earlier. And originally, the Navy was very interested in kind of maintaining their relationship with Hollywood. And I believe they even allowed them to ride along with a submarine as it was going about and doing its business. And they were trying to, I think the original script for this had something along the lines of a computer. So we're getting into spoilers for the newest Mission Impossible movie. You're getting into a story where there's a computer that either malfunctions or is in charge of launching of the missiles, and they are kind of fighting back against this computer that takes over the decision-making process. Once they're on the submarine, then they find out, yeah, no, that's impossible. Like that would never happen with the safeguards and the other things they have.
You'd like to play a game?
Yes, exactly. Why are we opening the hatch while we're underwater? I'm sorry, Dave, I can't hear you.
Open the pod bay door.
Don't open the pod bay doors, Hal.
Float the buoy, Hal.
Float the buoy, Hal. I'm sorry, Dave, I can't float the buoy, and it's getting hard to breathe in here. Let me just crack the window open a bit. So apparently after they go through their little ride along with the submarine and they realize, okay, well, maybe that story is not going to work so well. Then they realize, hey, we got a great idea. Let's do a story about a mutiny on a submarine, because there is a real life story during the Cuban Missile Crisis of a mutiny on a submarine. However, it was a Soviet submarine where that took place. Once the U.S. Navy found out that that was going to be the story, they basically said, no, thank you, and chose to pull all of their support. That is technical support, I'm sure consultants, all kinds of other stuff. And Pat, we were talking about this a few days ago, and you had a really good comparison to another property that we know of that maybe had some questionable consultants.
Yeah, and again, I'm saying this as just a guy that likes to read about the Navy, talk to people that served, and all that. I've never served, never been on a submarine, so I'm not trying to speak like an expert. That being said, I feel like some of the things, and we kind of referenced it in our Marin Open, I feel like some of the things that were like cringy, or I don't think that's how that works, were, like we said, was a result of maybe not having a consultant on board to kind of say, hey, you really want to do this, or that would never happen, or just to smooth those things over. And I said it was almost sort of like Star Trek Voyager, where the Chakotay character, I thought was an excellent part of the show, incredibly well acted, like the whole shooting match, except for when you get to the part where did he really accurately represent someone, an indigenous American individual? And the answer was no, because the person they had advising was not, I mean, at the time you'd say Native American, was not Native American, and kind of like made all this stuff up based on, like inaccurate information. So if you look at the character, it fit in with the show, but then you're kind of watching all this stuff, and when they would talk all about Native American culture, it wasn't accurate. It was just because the person that they had advising them knew nothing about it. And that's kind of what I feel like with this movie, is that it's like they really didn't have any official advisors. So they were kind of like filling in the gaps with things that were, inaccurate.
And I'm so
Well,
disappointed for
as
not
much as-
already having queued up some pan flute music as you were talking just then.
Right.
Well, here's the thing. Movies like this are always going to take a lot of license because they need the story to be what they need the story to be, regardless of how true it might be. Man.
Right. And I look forward as we get into that, and like I really think there's some really awesome, fun, entertaining parts of this movie, but I feel like the story could have been even more compelling if, well, like I said, a little bit more accuracy and a little bit less focus on the low-hanging fruit. But I'll save my comments for the appropriate time and place.
I'm even going to give a spoiler for our next week's episode too. That's probably going to be my thoughts over the course of these next two movies that we're going to be talking about for the next 2 weeks. I have similar thoughts about Waterworld when we get to that next week.
See, upon the rewatch this week, upon the rewatch now, like Waterworld seemed less bonkers crazy over the top than this thing did.
I have some thoughts on that we'll get into deeper next week, but this is the first time I had seen the extended cut of Waterworld,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
I think it helps.
yeah,
I think so too. Yeah, it still is like bat guano crazy, but
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
some of the things that made, I mean, we're talking too much about Waterworld on this episode, but some of the things that made it so weird get explained when you see everything they shot.
mm-hmm.
And so what I really, and I didn't dig as deep as I wanted to, and out of time, but like part of me's curious, like who made those creative choices? Because they maybe weren't right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it makes you wonder about this one.
We'll talk about that next week. There were some interesting
Yeah.
choices made. So a few of the things is real quick on what they kind of did not have access to. And again, I know we haven't even gotten to the point where we go through our major moments yet, but I did want to kind of focus on this because it was kind of a big reason why there might be some creative choices that are made in this movie. Normally, when a Hollywood movie makes a Navy movie, the Pentagon's Entertainment Liaison Office provides access to ships, bases, advisors in exchange for some script oversight and making sure that there's some positive portrayal. And in this case, the Navy refused all of it. No subs, no uniforms, no technical advisors. So the USS Alabama scene in this movie is actually a detailed soundstage set and partial exterior model, not a real submarine. It sounds like any exterior shots were using miniatures and models filmed in controlled water tanks, which is very different from the approach they took in Top Gun, where they had actual F-14 footage.
I'm just gonna say, maybe you're gonna get to this. You do know when it's leaving the harbor, that was the actual submarine.
Yes, they actually
Which
were. They were told that
and I
there
think
was
it was-
going to be a submarine that was, I think, going, was it to or from Pearl Harbor? And they so real quick like chartered some helicopters and shot some footage while it was leaving.
Yeah, and boats. And I want to say that it was the Alabama.
Okay.
I might be off on that, but yeah, they basically just chased the sub out of Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
And filmed it.
Yeah.
So
this, I think, could be both a bad and a good thing. And we'll talk more as we get into like the deeper thoughts portion of it. But without that oversight, the team definitely had more creative freedom, which I think can be a blessing and a curse in situations like this. You have some of the dialogue and chain of command conflicts are very much heightened for tension in this, maybe more so than you would get if you had the oversight of the Pentagon with this one. A lot of the real world submarine command structures, as I understand it, again, I have also never served on a submarine, but it's much more rigid, much more procedural than what we see, which is probably not going to play as well when you're doing a kind of an action thriller based movie, kind of a very tense movie. Some of the procedural stuff probably not going to play as well if you can't hype it up for the tension. So, some of the tension does give the movie this dramatic power that it has. You've got the very claustrophobic lighting in it, the extreme close-ups of people. Like you really do truly feel, if anybody's ever been on a submarine before, they tiny. I've been on a couple that are, dry docked in different places, and they are, I'm not a tall person. I may not be a tall man, but I know what it is to bump my head going through the doorway of a submarine compartment. Yeah, they're small and they're claustrophobic. And this movie does do a good job for any other things that it does that might be a little crazy. It does do a good job visually of helping you feel claustrophobic in certain scenes. So part of this, I think what they probably were able to change to because of that is without the backing, without the the support, the everything else, I think that they had to kind of rely on veteran consultants, some creative designs to kind of have the look and feel of a real Ohio-class ballistic missile sub, declassified manuals I think they used. So, I mean, they were creative in the way that they approached putting this all together without the Navy's support. And I don't know, I mean, the original story, I don't know if it was leaning more towards kind of more authentic, like naval operations, but it really kind of became, if you were going to sum up this movie in one phrase, I'd say that this was kind of like a psychological chess match between the two men that are in charge here. And I think Tony Scott even said, I think I found a quote from an article where he was quoted as saying he wanted to kind of capture the idea of, quote, two men in a box with the power to end the world. And if that's the case, then I do think he very, very well and very powerfully did capture that feeling. So, all right.
It was.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, that was very exciting, especially seeing such like just superb acting with Gene Hackman and Denzel Washington. It was awesome.
All right, quick synopsis for this one. We'll play the trailer audio for you, and then we'll do our overview of the major moments of the movie. And so after this quick synopsis, and we'll play the trailer, we'll be right back. In a world on the brink of nuclear war, Captain Frank Ramsey and Lieutenant Commander Ron Hunter must decide whether to launch or stand down. As tempers ignite aboard the USS Alabama, loyalty, courage, and the fate of humanity hang by a single command.
As you no doubt heard, my XO has appendicitis. Your name was at the top of the list.
That's good to know, sir.
It was a short list.
There's trouble in Russia. So they called us. And we're going over there and bringing the most lethal killing machine ever devised.
The last time we hit this state of emergency was 32 and a half years ago during the Cuban Missile Crisis. So this is what it's all about, gentlemen. It's what we trained for.
Submerge the ship.
Diving officer, submerge the ship, make a depth 150 feet.
On the 1MC. Dive.
This year,
We have a properly formatted emergency action message from National Command Authority.
what we've always known
Bravo, Echo, Charlie, Alpha.
becomes what we've always feared.
Gentlemen, this is the captain. Russian rebels have threatened to launch against our country and are fueling right now. This is not a drill.
Now,
Sir, we have a possibly submerged submarine.
You find out who that is.
Receiving emergency action message. Recommend alert 1.
the battle for survival begins.
That's a message fragment.
So we don't know what this message means. Our target package could have changed.
I've made a decision.
There's no place for fear.
He's lost his nerve.
I'd rather go out myself and get this one wrong.
There's no room for mistakes.
If we launch and we're wrong, what's left of Russia is going to launch at us.
I'm captain of this boat. I don't have to think this over.
There's no time for doubt.
Missile system's ready to launch in 6 minutes.
You repeat this order or I'll find somebody who will.
Hell no, you won't, sir.
And nothing can stop the tide.
Torpedoes in the water!
Right forward.
1,000 yards of closing dive! Make your depth 1,200 feet!
We cannot launch our missiles unless both you and I agree.
They're fueling our missiles.
He's right on top of us!
Please, Commando. Under arrest. Under charge of mutiny. Look, you're ready.
Lock Captain Ramsey's in his stateroom.
Fire one.
Now!
Give me the missile key, Mr. Hunter. Sir, we are going down. I'm the commander of this ship.
Crimson Tide.
God help you if you're wrong.
If I'm wrong, then we're at war. God help us all.
All right, so some of the fun part about that trailer, I didn't catch what the second piece of it was, but the first part of that trailer was playing the music from the T2 soundtrack.
That's where it was from.
Yeah. I think it was I want to say it was like the tanker chase music when they're chasing the T-1000 and they actually end up into the steel mill when he's on the tanker and it kind of eventually it kind of crashes and it slides into the steel mill, and then the T-1000, maybe is it tanker chase or into the steel mill? Either one, but it's music from T2, and then it switches into something else. I couldn't catch what the other music was, but immediately I'm like, oh, we're using some Terminator music here.
I do love the trailer music game.
Mm-hmm.
Where did they steal this from?
Where did they get those wonderful tunes?
Where does he get all those toys?
All right. Major moments for this one. The world is on edge. The movie kicks off in the chaotic aftermath of the Soviet collapse. Russia's falling apart. A hardline rebel named Vladimir Redchenko seizes a nuclear base out near the Chinese and North Korean borders. His guys threaten to launch if anyone gets in their way, so naturally, the U.S. sends in the USS Alabama, a nuclear submarine just in case things go completely sideways. Captain Frank Ramsey is old school Navy, a salty, battle-tested commander he trusts his instinct over theory. His new XO, Lieutenant Commander Ron Hunter, is basically his opposite. Thoughtful, cautious, trained in strategy more than combat, and you can start to feel some of the philosophical sparks the moment these two start working together and they have some of their little back and forths going. Things heat
So
up.
I just like to
Oh,
say,
go.
I just like to say two things. One, I like all the file footage of what was supposed to be Russia unrest and all that kind of stuff, because clearly some of the file footage was like Gulf War and and American soldiers and American uniform. You know what I'm saying? So it was, and I get it. Like, you get file footage, you're just going to use it, right? So, but I just found that entertaining.
Yeah.
And I would also like to know, when they say that he's one of the few guys that's actually seen combat, and then the only thing they really list is, putting SEALs ashore. What was it, Panama?
Mm-hmm.
Where did they, but I'd be curious, because, like, what kind of combat are they referring to? Was it submarine to submarine combat? I mean, I know that there's probably a lot of stuff that happened during the Cold War that we don't even have an inkling of. But if Rickover gave him in his command, I think, wasn't Rickover in the late 60s, early 70s? I mean, I might be way off with that. So I just, like I said, I get what they're trying to do with the movie, but I'm just curious, like, what combat did he see as a submarine captain?
Yeah.
And I know that point comes up later when he's, on house arrest, and he's like, I've been reading about our guy. Do you know he hasn't even seen combat? And it's like, well, there's, like, how much submarine combat are you, like what world are we living in where there's that much submarine combat that, it's that shocking that his new XO, the Denzel Washington character, has not seen combat? Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure,
So anyways, I just found that statement curious.
Yeah.
And I would love to know, in this fictional world, what combat he supposedly saw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So things
Just
heat
my
up.
questions.
Yeah.
Don't want to break up the flow.
No, that's fine. Things heat up pretty fast, literally, when a galley fire breaks out on board, killing the ship's chief mess officer. Hunter jumps in to help put it out, but Ramsey still calls a missile drill right after the fire is barely out. Hunter quietly questions that decision, and Ramsey publicly chews him out. It's the first real crack in what's already a pretty tense partnership between the two. The crew receives a terrifying emergency action message. The Alabama is to launch nuclear missiles at the rebel base. Everyone's nerves are on edge. This is not a drill. They start prepping for the launch just as the second message starts to come through, and then all hell breaks loose. And thankfully, they didn't launch, because that rebel base on Dantooine had been abandoned for some time. So had they launched missiles at that would have been a problem.
Just a waste of missiles.
At this point, yes. That's it. The rebels are there. My lord, could be an uncharted settlement. The Russian submarine ambushes them mid-transmission. The Alabama takes heavy damage, and the radio antenna is destroyed before the message is finished. So now Ramsey has half an order and no way to confirm if they're supposed to launch or stand down. Ramsey insists they fire. Those are his last verified orders, but Hunter's convinced that incomplete message might have been a retraction. When Hunter refuses to turn his missile key, Ramsey tries to relieve him of duty. Hunter pushes back, invokes Navy protocol, and has the captain locked in his quarters. That's right, the XO arrests his own commanding officer. So the Russian sub attacks again, and though the Alabama manages to destroy it, they've been left crippled, propulsion's down, they're flooding, the hull's creaking under the pressure. Hunter makes the brutal call to seal off a flooded compartment, with crew still trapped inside, saving the ship but losing men in the process. Ramsey's loyalists are not having it. They regroup and seize control of the bridge, throwing Hunter and his supporters into the mess hall. Now it's a full-blown mutiny on both sides, with two factions battling for control of a nuclear sub that's already limping along at the bottom of the ocean. Hunter breaks free, rallies weapons officer Peter Wepps and they try to prevent Ramsey from firing the missiles. Situation boils over to a literal gun-drawn standoff in the missile room. 2 officers, 2 keys, 1 decision that could end the world. And finally, they agree to wait for the radio to come back online before making the final call. Finally, the full message finally comes through. The launch order was rescinded. Radchenko's rebellion has already been put down. Crisis averted, barely. Back on shore, a tribunal determines that both Ramsey and Hunter were technically right and wrong. Ramsey retires with honors. Hunter earns command of his own sub. In the end, there's some mutual respect and a quiet acknowledgement of how close humanity came to disaster.
I can't even, I'm sorry, I can't, I'm just going to throw this out there.
Do it.
There was a mutiny on the sub, and the one guy ends up with a command of his own. Nobody goes to jail, and the other guy ends up with an honorable discharge after holding a gun to one of his sailors' heads.
Yeah.
Not because that sailor was like, you know, one of the mutinous guys, not because he was refusing an order, not because of, you know, all that, but because he was using him as like a hostage to threaten somewhere else. And this guy got an honorable discharge. I'm sorry, like that whole,
isn't it?
That is so bonkers, over the top. What time period, not time period, what time dimension are we in? Are we in the mirror universe? Did everyone just shave off the goatees? Like that part right there. I'm sorry. Like anybody that has been in the Navy, tell me where I'm wrong. Like just point it out. But I cannot wrap my noggin around.
Doesn't it just, Pat, it just hurts. There's like a hurt deep inside when you see somebody that there should be justice and you don't see somebody getting the justice they deserve just because you want to let them ride one last wave. Right? Right? Isn't that awful? Isn't that awful, Pat? Is that the worst thing you could possibly imagine?
So the only thing that would have been better is
there's one movie that already does that. But you know what, Pat? Give me 2. There's 2 movies that do that now.
If Bodhi went surfing by in this movie, okay, that's the only way it could have just gotten any better. I'm just saying. Okay, I'm sorry. Continue. I apologize. I'm trying to keep myself quiet over here, but I can't. We're all going to become friends. Like, okay, I'm muting myself. I just can't. I'm sorry, guys. I love you all. I love you, everything. To all our listeners, if this is your favorite movie, I'm sorry. I love it and it was entertained too, but the way that came down, that is crazy.
No, it's fine. We've established that Crimson Tide is part of the BPCU, the Point Break Cinematic Universe.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, just wait till we get to the time travel one. That's going to be crazy. And
then there's the one with the whales. And
the one with whales, yeah. Free Willy. Or Free Riri, however you want to say it.
Free Riri is in the Crimson Tide extended universe.
Yes. It's part of the director's cut. So the end title card comes up and says, starting in 1996, only the U.S. president can authorize a nuclear launch, which, after what we just saw, probably feels like the right call after all this. All right. Even though we've started a little bit of this here and there.
And you know what? I forgot to fact check that. Is that true? I mean, could like before 95, did it not rest with the president whether to decide to use nuclear weapons or not?
I don't know. I don't know if that's just a fictional thing. Or...
As Jerry Bruckheimer is known for, I think he's playing with semantics here.
No.
Because what I think they're saying is that until this moment, the missiles could be armed and launched with keys on the boat if an order was given. But I believe what happened in the late 90s was they had the technology to be able to remotely arm the missiles, which is the whole story of the nuclear football that travels with the president and all that jazz. My assumption behind that was, as much as they wanted to play it for drama, I don't think we could remotely do those things until the 90s.
Sure, yeah.
So, it's a little bit of semantic wordplay to heighten the drama a little, I think.
So I was trying to Google some stuff really fast, and it looks like, if this is correct, the change came on October 1st, 1997. So the system that prevents a submarine from launching missiles without a specific code from the president was fully implemented on October 1st, 1997. It involved installing permissive action links, or PALs, a type of use control system on all ballistic missile submarines. So before 1997, if this is accurate, a subcommander, upon receiving what they believed to be a valid EAM from the president, had the physical ability to launch. That main safeguard was the crew's duty to authenticate the message. And this, in the movie, the plot kind of hinges on how some of this could potentially be unclear. But I think in reality, there's a lot less chance of this actually happening. And then my understanding from this, if it's correct again, is after 97, the presidential launch order, the EAM, now contains a specific unlock code as part of the message, and that is required by the PAL system to physically arm the missiles. Without this code, the crew cannot launch, even if the commander orders them to.
Okay.
So, in short, I guess the president always had the authority, but the 1997 change introduced the technology that made that authority absolute by removing the physical ability for a submarine to launch on its own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So my understanding is that end title card, which mentions a change in 96, which is a year after the movie was made, was directly referencing something that was being upgraded but not finalized just yet until even 2 years later.
Which plays into the usual Navy purchasing cycle. If that makes sense.
Sure, yeah. All right. I mean, if we go too much deeper, we're going to reach crush depth, but I think we need to go into some deeper thoughts here.
And now, Deep Thoughts.
I have an opinion on this matter.
Don't mince words, Bones. What do you really think?
I like it a lot. Wow. It's very deep. Thank you.
All right. So when was the first time you saw this movie? Let's back up just a little bit. When was the first time you remember seeing this movie?
I don't think I saw it in the theaters, but like most of the movies from this general era, we're talking about HBO as soon as it was on HBO, or walking down the aisles of Blockbuster as the new release aisle, you know. I remember being excited for it because, I mean, a submarine movie. Let's do this. Obviously hoping for another Red October, which was, too much to hope for, but
yeah, I think probably same for me. I want to say it was probably high school, at some point high school, so late-ish 90s when I saw this. And I think same thing. I think I had already seen Hunt for Red October, and so this was a follow-up. And just knowing that Denzel Washington was in this and Gene Hackman was in it as well, I mean, that would have been a big draw to see either of these guys. Even if just one of them was in this movie, I think I would have been drawn to check it out. But probably after watching Red October, I was like, yeah, let's find what other submarine movies are out there. And so, yeah, I would say probably late 90s for this one.
Yeah, same. Don't think I went to see it in the theaters. I think I remember people talking about it, and I I saw it within a year or so of it coming out. Same thing. I remember discussing it with my family, like talking with my dad about it. Like, what did you, like, what seemed, and a lot of my, it probably was formed by him, the things that he found too campy or not believable. And that was his reaction. It was funny because that scene that I referenced, like, that was the reaction he had right away. He's like, if he holds a gun to one of his sailors' head, like, I don't see him getting off with, politely retiring and all that kind of thing. Like, yeah.
That was probably my biggest problem. That was probably my biggest problem in the movie, was the scene where he holds the gun to the guy's head.
That I had problems with that scene on like several levels.
Yeah.
But I mean, we can, get into it when we get past the first question. And my penchant for not seeing kids in peril, I mean, it seems kind of ironic, but when you realize that's probably an 18-year-old kid,
True.
Yeah. So anywho, Yeah, so I saw it early on, and yeah, I think I've probably seen it. I don't know about a dozen times, but at least a half a dozen times since then.
Okay. All right. Yeah. This was probably, if I had to guess, I think this is probably might be viewing number 3 for me. I think I've only seen this one either 2 or 3 times, but probably not more than that. I typically, if I'm watching a submarine movie, I'm probably going back to Hunt for Red October.
Yeah, same here. It's probably only 2 or 3 times, not a regular rewatch. I think the last time I watched it though was when the Greatest Generation guys did one of their bonus episodes and they covered the movie. I think I rewatched it for that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Did Friendly Fire do this one?
I believe
Before
they did.
Belly Up?
I'm wondering if they didn't because the boys had just done it on Greatest Generation. But I could be wrong.
Yeah. You mentioned great submarine movies to see, and it's funny because like their whole like discussion on the bus with that ridiculous scene where he makes the guys do push-ups. The guy does push-ups or whatever. I mean, okay. But anyways, like all the movies they talk about there were like great submarine movies. The ones they were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say, Run Silent, Run Deep was. I might be off because I'll use the parlance of the Navy, right? I'm making a snapshot on this one. But I want to say that Run Silent, Run Deep, that was Clark Gable and Burt Lancaster. And it was a similar thing where the first officer and the captain weren't seeing eye to eye about how to, execute the mission.
It's been, that feels right. It has been
with Torpedo Alley
since I saw Run Silent, Run Deep. But great movie.
Yeah, it was a great movie. And that was back in the day. And then they talk about The Enemy Below, and you talk about Consent of the Navy. I want to say for Run Silent, Run Deep, I think they got use of a former World War II submarine. And I know for Enemy Below, they basically gave them a destroyer escort and said, have at it. Here's a destroyer escort. Here's a bunch of depth charges. You guys just film away. And that's bonkers crazy in and of itself. But yeah. Anyways. So there you go.
So you want an example of how this movie could have even been more bonkers crazy? Do you know who they originally wanted to get as the 2 main leads for this? Had you found this anywhere? Had you seen this?
I did not.
Okay, so
Frank Sinatra and Samuel L. Jackson.
No. Although that would have been funny. Sick and tired of these missiles not being fired from my submarine. And what's that snake doing there?
A tasty missile.
That is a tasty galley fire. No, originally the part of Denzel Washington's character was going to go to Brad Pitt.
Oh.
Okay. Brad Pitt would have played that part. Brad Pitt was interested. Brad Pitt ended up dropping out because the person he wanted to play across from was taking too long to say yes, and eventually that person was no longer being considered. So when they stopped considering the person who was going to play Gene Hackman's part, Captain Ramsey, then when he dropped out, then Brad Pitt says, "No, actually, I'm good now. I just wanted to get a chance to act across from him, and now that he's not going to be part of it, I no longer want to be part of it either." The original person they wanted for the Captain Ramsey part, which would have made this an even crazier movie, especially given what we just watched him in not that long ago, is they wanted Al Pacino.
Oh, wow.
Now that's interesting.
We gotta find naval tradition here, and I got a great XO.
Well, it's funny because the yelling sort of is very Pacino.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna say, like, I know we're looking at him as Lieutenant Vincent Hanna, but Lieutenant Colonel Frank Slade.
Yeah.
That character would have been interesting in the Captain Ramsey.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I expect and demand your very best. Anything less, you should have joined the Air Force.
Hooah!
Hooah! Yeah. Definitely. I mean, it would have ramped up some of the. I mean, yes, I could see him doing it, and it probably maybe a little bit more subdued character than his character in Heat. But yeah, I could also see that like ratcheting up some of the crazy too.
Yeah. It's interesting because everyone we mentioned are fantastic actors that would, I think, bring their own unique something to the role that would just be fascinating to see. And in some ways, that's why I know with musicals, they'll do that, right? Okay, so, they'll bring a musical back, second run, they bring new actors, and it's great to see what they bring to it. And I know I'm going to really kind of swim upstream with this, but sometimes I like to see just flat out remakes of old movies. Not if they try and mess it up, but I just like to see what new actors bring to it. And not from the sense of competition or the think of, oh, well, we could do a better job at it. But, I mean, there will be nothing better than the original 12 Angry Men. But the redo of 12 Angry Men, it's great seeing those guys in those roles and seeing what they bring to it. And so I'm sometimes fascinated by those discussions just to see, like, what would Al Pacino bring to the Captain Ramsey role? And not from well, they could do it better, but just, everyone brings their own thing. So I don't know. I just would find that fascinating. But again, I wouldn't want to take anything away from Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman. I mean, like, you could not take your eyes off the screen when they were on it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, it was really just scenery chewing, get the camera on them, like, and they worked so well together. Like some of you find the old movies where, well, the most famous one that I'm thinking of is like Mag 7, where Yul Brynner and Steve McQueen, Steve McQueen was trying to do things to get the camera off, and Yul Brynner and on him, and they in the movie they were on the same side. Like this, these are two antagonists, but the way they just work together, and it's like that was just, for me, that the acting with those two guys, that was just top shelf, A+, just fantastic.
Yeah. So here's a question, because that we talked about the scene where he pulls the gun on the one sailor, and that's where it kind of lost me. Like, I'm at the point where now, if you and to your point, you said it earlier, Pat, if you're pulling a gun on somebody and threatening to blow his head off, then I don't think you end this movie by getting away pretty much scot-free. In fact, not just scot-free, you get away with retirement. You get away with basically being told, thank you for your service, and now go enjoy the rest of your life. No punishment, no consequences at all. In fact, the only consequences seem to be positive consequences. We kind of came out this on the other side with, well, you were both right and you were both wrong. And that's given us a lot to think about here today. Like, no.
Yeah.
No.
He
stuck a gun in the guy's face and threatened to blow his head off. No.
Yeah. And it really, that whole thing just escalated so fast. And they talk about the reason that there's two missile keys, the reason that there's two.
Well, there's no one man fire the missiles.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly the quote I was thinking of. But it was like that whole thing broke down so fast. And I feel like that's where the movie kind of fell apart a bit for me, was because why did that break down so fast? Now, okay, let's go back to Captain Ramsey. He's old school. He's tough on his subordinates. Like they said, walking down the hall, he's chewed through first officers, right? Like, I think that they make that comment. And then even the other one got appendicitis. They make some comments like, yeah, he got appendicitis, like, haha, okay, well, maybe there was something more to it. But then Captain Ramsey's saying, I can't stand brown nosers. I can't stand people that, don't speak their mind, and so on and so forth. But then it's like, okay, but that's not adding up to the character that we see.
Sure, yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, that statement is completely diametrically opposed to don't ever question my orders in front of someone again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, that's fair, but he didn't question your orders. He was reporting back on a galley fire in your boat. So, like, that doesn't gel. He's not saying, sir, I don't think we should be running this missile drill now. He just said, sir, the galley fire is contained, and you're shutting him down, and like, you don't even want that information. You don't even want to know what's going on in your boat. Then that doesn't make any sense at all. And that doesn't gel going back to the beginning when you say that I want someone that speaks their mind. So that's where the movie kind of fell apart, because it was like, I felt that unfortunately made the Captain Ramsey character inconsistent. Gene Hackman did a fantastic job with it, but just the writing of the character, there wasn't a continuity there. And then, when he does explain to him, look, we're not going to be fighting in, whatever, you're not just going to be fighting when it's all good. We've got to use this time to, train our people. Chaos on a submarine is something to be taken advantage of. I'm like, okay, well, that's a really cool, all right. But why would you not explain that to your officers? Why would you not explain that to your first officer to establish a team? Why would you not say, this is what I'm about, and this is where we're going, and this is my why, which is really, really important if you want people on board. And again, I don't get why you can't have it that way, but then be shutting him down when he's just trying to tell you about the galley fire. Like, I don't see that as consistent. And I really wish they would have written it where it was more like that. I really wish they would have shown an instance where we don't question orders, and here's why. And that's something that, to my understanding, is very important. You can't have a boat full of people all questioning, the captain's orders. Like, that whole thing, they got to hear us, we're working together, consistency, all that. Like, that's key. Because otherwise, like, that military world, that submarine world, that's going to fall apart. But I felt like they should have written those characters a little bit more consistently. And even as it progresses, they kind of turn the Captain Ramsey character into like a Captain Ahab, who, you're the literary one, but I mean, Captain Ahab wasn't like a calculating, intelligent, like, this is how I'm going to, go about this thing, because, this is what's best for how we execute the battle. Captain Ahab was driven mad with his rage to try and catch the whale. And that's kind of what they turned Captain Ramsey into, to the point that he was stalking around, striking people when they wouldn't hand over the key, holding guns to the sailors' heads. And some of the senior officers were looking like, I mean, like who was the guy that was the supply officer, and he was in not Goodfellas, Sopranos. Who was Tony Soprano? What's his name? Gandolfini. I mean, there were times when suddenly he had this like just sadistic look. Yeah. And it's like, okay. And so I started thinking, okay, well, yeah, that's what happens when, the chain of command breaks down, when, lawlessness, you'll start to see people. But then it was like, well, again, that happened really quick. These are serving officers, and suddenly it's kind of being played more like a pirate crew. And I found that unfortunate, because I think the movie would have been a lot more compelling if they would have just really doubled down on that. No, my way works because you do have to follow orders. And it was more rationed and reasonable, and not just the low-hanging fruit of, you're not listening? Smack. How about now? Smack. How about we talk about horses because they were all white? And, which I just, that was something that I just found that unfortunate. I think the movie would have been, I mean, it was already, with the actors and the way they delivered their lines and portrayed the roles, was fantastic. I think the story itself would have been even better if they would have just written it less Captain Ahab-like, and really truly like someone saying, this is the best way to do it because we're almost in a time of war, and this is why we need to do it that way. I don't know. It just kind of fell apart for me because of that.
Yeah, I was kind of curious about this. Like, when did we get the shift from? Because I feel like more recently, you hear less and less about some of the what we might call the toxic leadership that you see from Ramsey in this movie. And actually, that's a term that the military, as I was doing a little bit of research, the military kind of started to define toxic leadership, corrosive leadership in the 2010s. And part of it was because of after 9/11, you had a decade after that of pretty consistent, constant deployments and people on kind of high alert for a lot of different things from about 9/11 on. And so they had started to do some studies. And I believe from what I had kind of pulled together was that you kind of started to see that there was kind of a breakdown in the amount of talent that you were retaining in the military because of corrosive leadership. And because of this, you also had, escalation of suicide rates and other like high risk behaviors in the military. And as they started to kind of study this, they're like, well, okay, this is something we need to work on changing. And so what I was able to find was really just within the last, I don't know, maybe 8 or so years, the military has kind of formally defined that type of leadership in their official documentation, regulations, and really trying to move that out of trying to have the leaders be more accountable and have it be more of a, what do they call it in one report, was the Army People strategy, kind of a personnel model that is a 21st century talent management system. That was the quote I saw somewhere. And the idea is that if you have those type of leaders, if you have the Ramseys of the world, then you are less likely to retain good talent. You're more likely to get into, near catastrophic situations. Whereas if you have a leader that's more the hunter model, so maybe that's where this movie is also kind of a changing of the guard from the old style military leadership to what it would become as we get further and further into the 21st century is, I think somebody like Hunter would be praised today for that critical thinking, for the moral courage to challenge an order that, was based on bad information or incomplete information, that he would provide that very clear and honest advice, to his commanding officer. And so I thought that was interesting, that as I was reading up on that, I'm like, okay, well, now that kind of answers the question. If this movie was made today, you would hopefully be more likely to see, or the ideal would be, you're more likely to see somebody like a Hunter as the person in leadership.
Well, and it's funny because, I don't know if you guys have ever listened to the Jocko podcast, Jocko Willink, or read any of his books. And Jocko's a Navy SEAL, served in combat in Ramadi. Some of the toughest fighting, and he talks about leadership. And it's funny because one of the things that he says, and I am not a military man. So if I'm speaking out of turn and there's anybody out that I don't want to get out of my skis with this, but the way he says it is that everyone thinks that in the military, you can just bark orders and everyone just does it because that's the military way. And he's, since then he's got a group that he talks leadership and he works with businesses and school districts, and helps develop leaders. And his thing was, honestly, in the military more than anywhere else, it comes down to building relationships with people, taking accountability as a leader, and putting your people in the best position to succeed. And he just breaks all that down, and you don't see it with the Ramsey character at all. And it's funny because, he points to someone that he read that was, a soldier during the Vietnam War. And I know there's a little bit of controversy surrounding him, but General Hackworth wrote a book called About Face. And, it was just basically his memoirs, but the way he talked about taking care of your soldiers and taking care of your men and so forth. And it was, again, the focus on that. And I'll go back even more and I'll make another movie reference. But if you ever watch Band of Brothers, Major Dick Winters, right? And, he was one of the most effective leaders. And you read in the books, you hear people talk about his leadership style, and you watch it in the Band of Brothers. And I mean, that was all the way back to World War II. And he was completely focused on making sure that, his soldiers succeeded, taking care of the men, not taking from the men. And I think there was that little side story. You guys have seen Band of Brothers, right?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you see the whole thing with the portrayal of Sobel. And I know that, some of Sobel's family said, well, they kind of felt that maybe that portrayal was a little unfair in the show. But within that, Sobel was kind of the browbeater, just tough and just like, autocratic and just almost spiteful towards the men. And there was a lot of great training that he gave them. But by the end, he had a mutiny on his hand. All his non-coms walked into the colonel and said they wouldn't go to war. I mean, they basically mutinied. And I think that's when he says, I can have you all taken out and shot. The only thing that's holding me back is that, we're about to launch D-Day. And so I think, and that was kind of going back, that's what Jocko Willem says. You can only push people like that or, browbeat people like that to a point before they're going to mutiny. And mutinies will happen. Like, people are just going to push back and say, forget it, we're not going to do that. The way to have success is, and it doesn't mean that you have to be soft, but you have to understand your people and you have to give them why. You have to bring people on board. This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. You might not like this order, but, and it's, I don't know, it's an interesting thing. I felt like this movie maybe undersold it a little bit just because they oversold the Captain Ahab nature of it, and they really dodged. I mean, there were some great dialogue exchanges, but did we really get to drill down on the should we go left, should we go right? And I mean, the shame of it was, and that's where I'm surprised that everybody got out of this thing scot-free, except for the guys that got locked in that plate, in the bowels of the ship. Like, if those guys would have just put their heads together, they probably would have been able to float the buoy, get confirmation, and still launch the missiles in time. Like, right, and that's kind of the whole thing. But yeah, I know they kind of went for the splash. They wanted the running gunfights in the sub. They wanted the tense action. They wanted the holding the gun to the guy's head and screaming into the, and all that kind of stuff. Because I think that was a bigger splash for a Hollywood blockbuster. But I think what we were robbed from was an actual chance to see those two attitudes, and ways of being, ways of leading, to see those really interact. So,
yeah.
I mean, even that scene where he comes up, sir, and he like holds his finger up to him, like, wait a second, because he was reading whatever that little book thing was.
Yeah.
And it was like, I thought, okay, he was going to read from the book and no, he was just big dogging him. He was just like, no, you're just going to wait.
Right.
And it was like, I don't see that. Like, that's inconsistent. Then how come you said that you wanted someone that would speak their mind? Like, that doesn't gel.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts on this one before we jump to our 3 questions?
I'm just going to say it's not a ship. It's a boat. I watched it 3 times before we did this podcast tonight. I counted, they said boat twice and they said ship like half a dozen times. And then I got done counting. And they're all supposed to be quiet and everything. And they're at general quarters. And then it was just like, all of a sudden it was like, well, now we're doing this, and they pan to the other thing, and the guy's sitting in his rack with the stereo going.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, oh, we got to turn down the scope. Okay, well, I guess we're not practicing noise discipline. And everybody, like, you always hear, like, don't yell into the walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
Speak calmly. We know it's a tense situation, but everybody was yelling.
Right.
Like, everybody was yelling. So there really wasn't much in the way of noise discipline. There wasn't much in the way of, like, let's just calm down and do our jobs. And so I'm kind of like, okay, this is just over the top.
Is this the Pearl Harbor of submarine movies for you?
Pearl Harbor is a whole other level of fun, but I was entertained by it, and I'll watch it and I'll be entertained. And like I think I told you, or I think that maybe I was saying it to Jeff. This to me is a prototypical, I don't think I used that word correctly, archetypal, something typal, tickle typal, 90s movie,
Yes.
right? It's a 90s movie. It's kinetic. There are things moving. There's urgency. The soundtrack goes da-da-dun-dun-dun, clang, da-da-dun-dun-dun, clang, 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 dun-dun-dun. We're in the rain. We're driving. We're checking in, showing the ID. I'm holding the ID right next to my face. Now we're driving in and there's rain. I'm blowing you a kiss through the window and I tap the window hard with my fingers. Pictures of men running, pictures of men cheering, pictures of men sorrowful, upshots that are kind of crooked that make it look dramatic. It's just very 90s.
You have described every Jerry Bruckheimer movie.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's cool because there's a type and it's just very, it's entertaining. I just wish they could have had a consultant that would have, you know.
Yeah.
And what's the difference with Top Gun? Because like they said,
okay.
Go, Bo. I'm talking too much. I'm muting myself.
There's an interesting question though. You said, what if they had a good consultant? So the Navy backed out when they saw the script because they didn't like the idea of a mutiny on a submarine. Do you think their backing out was to their detriment because of how it was portrayed?
Well, so for me, there's a 30-year gap. Back then, I think there's always, I mean, I think there were probably enough people that served on submarines that, you know, Uncle so-and-so or, you know, would be like, that's not the way that happens. No, I don't think so. You know, like, I think there would be enough of that I don't know that would be I don't know if it would be at the Navy's detriment. And now I think there's just so much calling out movies and trying to find I think we're almost pre-programmed now. Like the art of watching and critiquing movies is, 30 years on, we're even more attuned to that. We could look at the trivia, but we go to fact versus fiction websites. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I don't know if that would be to the detriment to the Navy. This film came out in peacetime. I mean, now we're just coming off the back of, fighting in two very prolonged wars, or one war, two locations. You know what I'm trying to say. So I don't know. I think our perspective has changed, but I don't know that it. Like I said, to me, this just doesn't seem to accurately portray the Navy. Again, if there's any of our listeners that are serving, one, thank you, and two, like, just point to me, point it out where I'm wrong, it was a fun story and a fun adventure, and I love the idea of, oh my gosh, there's this incredible destructive power, and these guys aren't agreeing. Like, holy moly, that was highly entertaining. Like I said, it just kind of fell apart with me in terms of reality, because I don't think that's exactly the way it would come down. And if the guy was that unhinged, maybe he just showed it now, but how would that have not come out earlier? I mean, how would that guy have maintained so many commands earlier? And if they knew there were 4 Akula submarines that were possibly in rebel hands, how come the Boomer, the missile submarine, wasn't accompanied by 1 or 2 fast attack subs to take care of it? Like, yeah, I get where they were going with it, but there's just enough in it that it just seemed manipulated, a little too much. It's sort of like Superman's powers are just powerful enough to make him epic, but can be just weak enough to make the story compelling, right? Like you kind of turn that to keep this. Yeah. So that's kind of what it was with me. And for me, it just kind of was like they weakened credulity just a little bit too much to get the splash.
I will say you might also be trying to apply too much logic to how people end up in positions of power.
Also fair.
So, time for 3 questions, John.
You don't want to talk about that a little bit more, Pat?
Turn the lights down low. It's time to go.
All right,
I'm gonna not sing what I was thinking because
playing us off to theme. It's like the Emmys in here.
I know. It's like just take your award and get off.
He asks each traveler 5 questions. 3 questions. 3 questions.
It's impossible to answer.
Impossible because you don't know the answer.
Nobody could answer that question.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions. And I want to have them answered immediately.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
I apologize. I did hit the button for 3 questions, but I should have hit this one first.
Pat just rejected your question.
But probably for good reason. All right, question number 1. What is your favorite magic trick you've ever seen performed? So we see a magic trick occurring at the birthday party at the beginning of this movie. So what is your favorite magic trick you've ever seen performed?
I like any card tricks. Like the ones where you pick your card, you put it back, they shuffle it up and do some things, and all of a sudden they pull out the same card. That stuff, close hand, sleight of hand magic is just fun.
There's this one trick that involves a pencil. I'm not going with that one. It's gone. No, one of my favorite magic tricks I've ever seen performed was actually we were not married at the time because we were still in high school, so obviously that would not have happened. But my wife and I, girlfriend at the time, were going to a musical at the Lincolnshire Marriott. That's when you just mash it all together. The Lincolnshire Marriott Theater that is not too far from where we live, and it was senior year of high school, and we went to go see Houdini the musical.
Oh.
And I remember having a lot of fun at this. One of the things that was really fun was they actually recreated several of Houdini's escape acts. So like the giant tank of water, and then Houdini gets like chained up and tied up and everything else. And they recreated a lot of these tricks. So I'm just going to say going to that show and seeing that done, because it was the for people who are not familiar with it, it's a theater in the round. So you don't have a lot of space to be able to deal with the stage and other pieces that are going on. So for them to be able to pull off some of those different escape acts, like I don't even pretend to know how they do that stuff, but kind of using that environment and just like the way it was all done, I thought it was a lot of fun.
That's really cool.
Now, the other one I could say is
right.
We did go see a comedy magic show by a guy called The Amazing Jonathan. Not family friendly at all, but it was also hilarious.
That's awesome. I don't know that I've ever been to a magic show. I don't think I've ever been to a magic show. I got nothing. What have I ever seen? Didn't Steve Martin do like a magic? Like I had never seen it live, but there was an old Saturday Night Live where he did the intro and Bill Murray was the guy from the audience, and he was like, I'm gonna take this guy's wallet or something, and it was all kind of funny stuff like that. I thought that was pretty good. Penn and Teller stuff, but again, I've never seen them live. I've got a gap in my life experiences, guys. I don't have anything to add to this.
Yeah, I'd like to see Penn and Teller live. I bet they're just fun.
Steve Martin, I feel like he had a name that he used as his like magic performing name. I think he used to do magic tricks on Johnny Carson.
Okay.
Yes.
What was his name?
Now that you say that, I have a memory of it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I feel like he had because he kind of came up in, I feel like some of the stuff he did, he kind of, apart from also, being able to play the banjo and some other things, I feel like as he was kind of coming up in the comedy world, he also was kind of, doing some stuff.
Great Flydini.
Oh, Great Flydini. Okay, I did not remember that name, but
Steve Martin is the Great Flydini.
Okay.
Carson Tonight Show.
But I do remember feeling like I had seen him a few times, because we used to watch Johnny Carson a lot when I was a kid, And I do remember feeling like I had seen him on Johnny Carson doing like comedy and magic tricks.
That's some wild, wacky stuff.
So wild, wacky
And
stuff.
and I know that on Saturday Night Live he did it a little bit like in some of his monologues, because I remember Bill Murray was like the plant, and it was there was some funny thing where he's like, well, you're gonna have a hard time driving home without your wallet, and then each time it got progressively more obvious, he was like yanking the wallet, and by the end he was like tearing his belt off, and it was just it was really like everything that those guys did. It was just hilarious. But I guess that would be my favorite. I'm sorry, man. I got nothing.
That's fine.
I'm sorry. I've failed the podcast.
No failure on your part. Number 2, what is your favorite mutiny movie?
This is a tough one because mutiny story might be Treasure Island.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I don't really know if I like any of the movies of Treasure Island.
Okay.
They're just not, I mean, they're fine, but they're not great.
Yeah.
There's the Disney one. Didn't they have like a made for TV movie one too?
Yeah.
I believe so, yeah.
But we are a movie podcast, so if we're talking about movies,
yeah,
I might have to just go classic and go Mutiny on the Bounty.
There you go.
Yeah. Mel Gibson and Anthony Hopkins or the original?
I think the original. Not to take anything away from Mel Gibson and Anthony Hopkins, but the original. There's something about that original Mutiny on the Bounty that's classic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very good. It's very good. I had to go and list like mutiny movies, and I kind of came up with the same thing, Mutiny on the Bounty.
I'm going to go with the mutiny movie that I watched most growing up, and that is Genesis is Planet Forbidden. I got just all the sabotage of the Excelsior and the all that stuff. I know it's not of the movies that we're listing. It's not a classic in the sense of Mutiny on the Bounty or something like that, but I don't know. As a kid, Star Trek 3 Search for Spock it had a very special place in my nerdy little heart.
There you go.
Yeah, if you're counting that as mutiny, I agree with that. That's good. The word, Admiral? The word is no. Therefore I'm going anyway.
I feel
don't
like
call me Tiny.
I feel like that has shaped so much of how I try to handle things.
Your next question, it really, yeah. There's a case. I mean, I'm okay. I'm just gonna sound like I'm totally a Trekkie, and I'm gonna sound like a Trekkie, but Captain Kirk's pretty cool, dude. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like there's a lot of
we may have a bit of a theme running here. So let's go to question 3. If you served on a submarine in a movie, what actor would you want as your captain?
What actor? That is an interesting wrinkle to your question.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm gonna harken back to our pre-podcast discussion. I might want to be on a boat with Air Force One, Anson Mount himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mr. Pike's Peak.
Indeed.
Pike's Periscope in that case.
There it is.
That hair is so awesome. I think we're all going to crush depth with that hair.
Oh.
So my answer, actually, oddly enough, is also Star Trek related. Anytime there's any kind of a whatever you want to call it, a boat, a ship, something involved, I think in general, I'd want a Captain Picard. I think I'd want a Patrick Stewart as my captain in that case.
That's a great choice. That's a great choice. I myself would go, and why am I drawing a complete blank on his name? Avery Brooks. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I forgot his name. I think I'd go Avery Brooks.
Okay.
It's well documented that that we're all Deep Space Nine fans. I mean, it's And yeah, what you guys just mentioned was great, but I was like, why not William Shatner? Like, why is he not the top of my list? And there's no reason.
I'm going to ask a question, and I'm going to throw a little bit of a wrench at you with this one, but I also know that we're not going to go for like another hour talking about this.
So, if I was going to name a non-Star Trek, like, I mean, obviously, Sean Connery with that portrayal of Marco Ramius, but honestly, I think like Lee Marvin.
Mm-hmm.
I think Lee Marvin would be a good captain.
Yeah.
And obviously not in terms of, just when you see him with the Dirty Dozen and not commanding a ship, but.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to cycle back to something I said, like we said, the fictional Star Trek, who's willing to take risks and all that. I feel like that Captain Ramsey character would have been so much more compelling if he was an effective leader, if he was, not so, again, I'll just use the term Captain Ahab, where it was almost this fatalistic, I must launch these missiles kind of things. And not to mention, do they really refer to the missiles as birds? That was often, and I'm kind of like, really? Is that the slang? Maybe it is. I don't know. If someone could write your answer on the back of a PlayStation 5 box and send it to the pod, like, that's cool. But you read about that, and
it's in the box, though.
Yes.
Well, Pat, I'm going to point out, for the number of years you've been telling people to write something in the back of a PlayStation 5, at this point, you should just start preemptively asking for a PlayStation 6.
I would agree.
Yeah,
that's probably a good call.
At this point.
Time to up it. But I mean, you read about, especially, now that it's becoming declassified, which some of these sub drivers did, like during the Cold War, or even going back, what they did during the Second World War. And I mean, you talk about taking risks and pushing their boats. And I was reading recently about these destroyer captains during the Battle of the Atlantic, and they were training, British and American were training together, and the American commanders were just like, when they first started training with the Brits, they were saying that a lot of, if I've got this right, that there were all sorts of these like things that they would do where that was like, it seemed really risky. Like they would whenever they were leaving the harbor, if I've got this right, they would race out of the harbor. And it was like, and at first the Americans are like, what the heck? That seems incredibly risky. But the idea was to push the crews and, how much, to challenge them, to push them. And yeah, it's, there is high risk, but that's how you're going to learn to perform the best. And there was an American
Starfleet regulations specify thrusters only
exactly.
Space dock.
Thank you, Mr. Savick. One quarter head, right? And it was, there was a destroyer captain that they talked about being super aggressive, and it was really, he told his crew, like, my goal with this ship is we're going in harm's way, and like everybody get on board because that's what we're doing. And again, I love that part of the movie, that speech where he's like, my one request of you is keep up. And, if you feel that warming sensation, it's my boot in your butt or whatever it was. I thought that was a great speech. But then it was like, well, they can't keep up with you if you don't explain the path.
Right.
Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm cycling back and finding more things. So
yeah.
That's all.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode for Crimson Tide. So this has been the beginning of our High Seas Adventures month in the month of November. Our other episodes this week was Crimson Tide. Next week is Waterworld. After that, Cutthroat Island. We're going to do a special episodes towards the end of the month on a tribute to Hollywood car designer George Barris. Had a lot of fun vehicles that he designed for Hollywood TV. And then we're going to end the month with The Net, starring Sandra Bullock. Our Patreon episodes this month are Rocky Horror Picture Show, which we had a fun time recording with our good friend and October co-host and Patreon co-executive producer Rob Perry. And then if I can ever get myself to finally finish the series, or at least what's out so far, Rob and I are also going to be recording a Patreon not-so-short episode on Alien Earth that came out this year as well. So some good stuff over on the Patreons, but some really good stuff going on here in the month of November, High Seas Adventures. The other thing that I'm a little weirded out by is the fact that it's already November.
Mm-hmm.
Like every year seems like it goes really, really fast as we get through the years. But so we are barreling ahead towards 1996 coming up really, really soon. But we've got some really good stuff in November and December, particularly banger of a month coming up in December. So really excited to tell you about some of those coming up pretty soon. But come on back here next week for Waterworld. So we'll melt the polar ice caps in the meantime. And so, grab your filters. And yeah, I don't know what else to say about that.
I was wondering where you were going to go with that.
Yeah, it was an interesting.
Apparently,
we're on a roll for sure.
Apparently, filtering out water is the number one biggest problem in the future.
Oh. But who does number 2 work for?
Yeah, apparently number 1.
But is that really that odd when you see the still suits from Dune? Is it still suits? What do they call those? No.
You're right.
No, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, still suits.
That's fine. I try not to imagine that either.
Mm.
No. All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here as always.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Everybody be excellent to each other. Go watch some good movies. We'll see you back here next week for Waterworld.
Bring the lights down low, it's time to show. Lights, camera, you know what we mean. Behold the magic of the silver screen. Some movies rock, some movies shock, they're powerful, alright. We cover them all on your favorite part. So many movies we can choose, even when you win, you lose. Life moves pretty fast, some will fizzle and some movies last. I understood